quorum here, so let's get going. Start us out with roll call. Cheryl?
Yes, Cheryl Hunter present.
Jim Zalad, present. Brian Melty, present.
Tom Keefe present.
Martin Fig, present. Dave Curran, present.
Rick Byers present.
Jeff Sweet, present.
Let's see, we have enough attendance. We'll go on to item 3 with approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda. Support.
Motion by Dave Coyne, support by Marty Fig to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Tonight's agenda is approved. Moving on to agenda item number 4. Approval of the meeting minutes of May 17th, 2022. How are those looking to everybody?
Good, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. I'll support.
Motion by Brian, support by Jim. Approve the May 17th meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's carried. Meeting minutes are approved. Going on to item number 5. Presentations. Anybody? Anything? Nothing tonight? Moving on to agenda item number 6, public comment. Nobody in the galley. Move on to item number 7, reports. Accounts payable.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'll start with the accounts payable for the East EDA and go over that report for you. We have payment to Consumers Energy for $531.43. We have a payment to Andrew Patterson Plumbing Incorporated for $475. That was for backflow prevention tests on the irrigation system along Pickard. And then we have a payment to Black Electric for $3,039.96. The Black Electric repaired some 5 streetlight heads and a bench light along Pickard. They also installed the summer banners and the Art Reach banners along Pickard and then out at, I think we call it the gateway out there. And then moving on, we have a payment to Gowner Lawn Care for mowing on Pickard in May. That was for $2,175. And then we have a payment to Hometown Decorations and Display for $1,960. This is for the holiday lighting. They replaced the cords on all of the holiday lights. And that was part of the contract that was approved the holiday lighting in the past. Then we had a payment to MMI for park bench, for ground maintenance around the park benches, emptying the trash out there along Pickard. For May, that payment is for $1,037. And then we have a payment to McGurk Sand and Gravel. This is for the demo to the property at 5800 East Pickard. That the amount of that check is $15,785. We have a payment to Mount Pleasant Area Convention and Visitors Bureau for the annual contribution for community promotion from the East EDA is $5,000. And we have a payment to Pleasantine Herb Farm. This is for $5,332.50. They, during the month of May, they They did some repairs to the irrigation system along Pickard for $95. And then we have a payment to the Union Township Fire Fund for $78,174.73. That is for, fire protection in the East EDA, for public safety. That amount is calculated based on the captures from the fire fund, millage rate to the East EDA. The East EDA gives it back to cover fire protection costs. And then we have a payment to Yo and Yo for their audit presentation they did last month for $300. So we have, accounts payable totaling $113,905.62. Are there any questions on those?
Just on the fire protection, that's the 2.5% millage that the township charges. Is that just a one-time annual, or is this collected both for spring and, or summer and winter taxes? It's just on one of them, right? In other words, we pay that once per year.
Right, this is an annual
Thank
fee for the fire protection for the whole year in the East EDA.
Thank you.
On the CDBG payment, there's one in the west and one in the east. But on the budget for the east, under community promotion, there's $10,000 budgeted. So is there another payment from the east to the CVB? Because I'm sorry, and on the west, there's only $5,000 budgeted, so that's at 100%, and then the east is at 50%.
There's $5,000 for something else. I would have to look at the detail and get back to you right offhand. I don't have an
Okay.
answer.
Is that the MEDC payment?
I think it might be, but to be certain, I'll have to
Yep,
check.
oh, good.
Yeah, it's just odd that if it's split evenly, then the two are different, I guess, the east and west.
I had a question on the lawn care. The US 27 where it crosses 20, there's nobody cutting the grass on the, we have flower baskets, but then I don't see Gunner or Mount Pleasant. And I know past it's all been trimmed, so I don't know, any idea what's going on there?
I appreciate the question. I'm going to be working with the folks to get that corrected, of course. Prior to all the damage done,
The
there were
construction,
things
yeah.
that grew in there, but there's nothing of that now. So I will be working with probably the lawn care folks.
Yeah, probably just from last season, just thinking they may not be done, so then he hasn't done it, but I think it's probably done now, cut down.
Yep.
Any more questions?
Does that area get irrigation too, that you're talking about, Tom?
That high, I don't think so. The
There
banks,
is-
it's a steep banks, kinda
Mhm.
up underneath the bridge.
There was actually irrigation in there, the flowers are irrigated.
Okay.
There was irrigation in there. There was a great deal of damage done by INDOT to our irrigation system. So, if I recall correctly, all they restored was basically just flowers. Check it back.
Yeah, they have all the big hanging baskets all the way down those planters, but then the planters are just thigh-high weeds. So it looks kinda, what's the point?
Yep. Need a motion?
Pardon?
You want to have one motion or two motions to pay the bills?
We can do them separate.
Okay. Make a motion that we approve the East DDA payables as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jim Zaled, support by Dave Point. For the East EDA payables, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion's carried. Payables approved. Continue, Sherry?
Okay, moving on to the West EDA payables. for community promotion. And then we have a payment to the Union Township Fire Fund, and this is also for the public safety, for $63,255.49 for fire protection in the West DDA. And then we have a payment to the Union Township General Fund, for $88.23. That's basically because, when there's a MasterCard payment, when we put something on MasterCard for the East or the West DDA, that gets paid out of general fund cash, and then we have to give it back from, from the West or the East, depending on what it may be. So that's what that payment is for, something that was paid on the MasterCard that was actually for the West DDA. This is for printing, the updated tip plan. And then, we have a payment to Yo and Yo for the, West DDA audit presentation that was done last month, and that's for $300. So we have total accounts payable of $68,643.72. Are there any questions on those payments?
Make a motion, we approve the West DDA bills as presented.
Support.
Motion by Jim Zale, support by Marty Fig. To approve the West DDA payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. And motion's approved.
Okay, so let's move on to the financial statements for the East DDA. Looking at your revenue and expenditure report, we do have, the revenues are coming in at about 99% of budget. You'll notice that we now have the property tax for the East DDA posted here that was collected in the 2021 tax year. That particular line item is a little over budget, which is a good thing. We were able to capture from Mid-Michigan College, millages, and so it's higher than we predicted. When we estimated this, revenue for the budget, we didn't know about the Mid-Michigan College, revenue portion of it, so that's looking good there. And then moving on to the expenditures, all of the payables that you just approved are posted here as expenditures. And, things are looking good there. We have, the expenditures posted are about 12% of the annual budget.
Sherry, can I jump back to the revenues and ask about the line item for state aid revenue? That just hasn't been received?
Yes, that's a good question. That report to request that state aid revenue is due to the state June 15th. And we completed that report for both the West and the East DDA on time. It's submitted to the state. And then we'll hear something later on that, and we should receive money for that later in the year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any questions, more questions on revenue or expenditures for the East DDA? Okay, moving on to the East DDA balance sheet, I'll just quickly go over the cash. You've got about, in the East DDA, you've got about $2 million in cash as far as the assets go, and then your estimated ending fund balance right now is about $1.9 million. Are there any questions on the balance sheet for the East DDA? If not, I'll move on to the West DDA financials. Looking at your revenue and expenditure report for the West DDA, again, you'll see that revenues are about 111% of budget. The same scenario here, we have the property tax capture posted here for the year, $397,780. We came in higher because of the capture from Mid-Michigan College. And then moving on to the expenditures, total expenditures are coming in at about 9% of the total budget at this time. That'll increase as some invoices come in on the projects that are in the budget later this year. Are there any questions on revenues or expenditures in the West DDA?
When you say the capture from college, are we, so funds that they were going to get, how does that work, I guess? And then how does that benefit I mean, it's a substantial amount of money, right? It's almost 40 in the west and just over and about the same in the east. So is that taking money away from the college that now we're given the authority to disperse as we see fit, or how?
Yes, I mean, all of the revenue for property tax for East and West DDA is a tax increment finance capture from everything, all the taxing entities except the schools.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
So related to that then, because we don't capture and keep 100%, some of that goes back, I'm assuming then ultimately they get a piece of that back, correct? The college?
Not on this, this is all calculated out and figured out.
Okay.
There's an agreement between
This is past
the
that.
township and the county.
Yes.
But Mid-Michigan College is not part of that agreement.
Understood now. Thank you.
And the township doesn't capture exactly 100%, because you have some properties that are worth less than they were in 1991, and you have some that are worth more, and so they offset each other, and the computer system calculates a factor based on values. As they go up or go down, each year it changes slightly.
Right, it's helpful to remember that that contract only captures some of that was county villages that we're talking about, county taxes.
Right.
So back on Jeff's point then, regarding the college, we're capturing 100% of that essentially.
100% times the factor, which
Right.
is about 0.84.
Right.
I guess one thing I would add to this is that this is a new millage for the college.
Right.
And as part of their calculation, they had to have looked at this issue because they knew about our DDA district, the city's DDA district. So this is not money they were expecting to receive.
And I had thought that too, sorry.
Okay, so because it's a county, that's how the West benefits from it, even though their facilities are over in the east. It was based on the actual, okay. Nope, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on to the balance sheet. Just give you an overview of the cash really quick here. So you have in assets, basically in the form of cash, you have about 1.8 million. And then your expected ending fund balance at this point in time would be about 1.8 million. Any questions on the West EDA balance sheet? Okay, if not, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you today.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sherry.
Sherry.
Thank you.
Well, let's let the record show the financial reports were received, presented, and filed. Let's move on to item 7C, 2021 annual report, activities report.
Thank you. This is really just for your information packet. We are required on an annual basis to report on the activities in the East and West EDA district. It's really, there are two reports. One is public, the one you have in your packet. This is required ultimately to be posted on our website, which will be after this meeting. And the other one is financial reporting that Sherry puts together that's sent to the state treasurer's office and for their record keeping. So this basically summarizes the activities in 2021. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions about it, but it's essentially intended to cover the requirements of Public Act 57 of 2018 that governs what we do in the DDA districts.
So this just covers the 2021 activities, or is some of 2022 projected as part of it?
Well, where we budgeted funds in 2021, but the project didn't come to pass, such as the upcoming road work at Brookfield and Lincoln. So it's noted that where we anticipate construction in 2022, our sidewalk project is another one on Ringus Road. So the action that's recorded is the budget, but we just note construction where we know that it's coming. So, but this is the report for 2021. And if you go on our website, if you go on the EDA board website, you can see a page that has 2019, 2020 reports on there as well. And as I said, this will be added to it after our meeting today. It's due to be posted by the end of the month. And this is actually, I guess one thing I'll add is that this is the first step in our reporting. The other element that we have coming up is we do have our special informational meetings. We're required by Act 57 to hold 2 of these informational meetings outside of our regular meeting activity. The first one is, you have your schedule, it's July 26th. It's the week after our regular July meeting. At 4:30, we held at the Township Hall. And basically, it's for the taxing jurisdictions to come in and ask questions. So I expect the county will be there. Mid-Michigan College may be there. We can notify them as well now. And it gives them an opportunity to see this report and they basically come in and make any comments or ask any questions about our activities. So the first meeting is July 26th, Tuesday, and the second one is in August on our regular meeting date, but it's scheduled to be held first and then our regular meeting afterwards.
Any more questions on that? Let's let the record show you received the 2021 annual synopsis of Economic Development Authority activities. Thank you. Also in your packet, agenda item 7E. See the board member matrix. For your information. on to agenda item number 8, new business.
So we have two new business items. The first one, I have to start with an apology. You have on your desk the actual request for board action for 2120 Yates Drive that had all of the additional information that was supposed to be attached to it a week ago, and that it was my fault. Somewhere in the translation, I sent the wrong file to Amy, so the wrong file got in the packet, and the attachments didn't get there. So you have them now, and we did update the packet online, but obviously we did that just a couple of hours ago. This is something we talked about briefly last month. This property on Yates Drive. This is Yates Drive is south off of Pickard Road, just west of Isabella. It's a small residential neighborhood right near the elementary school. Nice pathway right down to the elementary school along Yates Drive. This particular house suffers from the passing of the owner without heirs. As we noted in our report, we've been dealing with this property for a couple of years now. Through ordinance enforcement, we did finally locate the owner. Some real detective work to find her in an assisted living facility, and she was cooperative, but she just couldn't get it done. She passed away in January of this year. She did intend to take the house down, to clear the lot up. She wanted to sell it, and it just didn't happen. It's, at the point she was already currently behind the taxes. Property went into tax foreclosure in February. We were notified of the hearing for that, and the county treasurer's office now owns that property. And under the Property Tax Act, the township is in line to, if we wish to purchase property for the minimum bid price. It used to be simpler than it is now. There's some complicating factors, but we have sort of a window of opportunity where we can purchase it for the minimum bid price if we choose. In the past, we had to have a public purpose for doing it. In fact, changes to law, we don't have to have a public purpose now. In the past, we also were restricted on how much we could sell the property for. Essentially, if we bought it for the minimum bid in the past, we could not sell it and actually have any kind of a profit from it. All that language was removed from the act in 2021 when they added some language about market prices and some complicating factors that certain circumstances apply. You have to pay the market rate. We're not expecting any of those circumstances to apply here. The Treasurer's office has found no heirs. We found nobody but the now deceased owner. So we're expecting that we would be able to, if we choose to, purchase this for the minimum price. The reason for this is entirely about stabilizing and protecting this neighborhood. This is a neighborhood where it's part of our East EDA district. We have spent money, we paved those roads. The East EDA paid to pave Yates Drive. And as I said, this is an area right adjacent to our commercial businesses, literally across the street. It's property that is part of the Chris Doyle filling station project. Vacant land is not being built for the filling station, but it's part of the parcel that the filling station will now be on. There now is consolidated there a couple of acres of vacant land that could be developed. But it's a neighborhood that it's kind of a lower income area. There's some rental housing, but it's a neighborhood that is largely in good shape. There are certainly neighbors that take care of properties. And this is an eyesore, and it has been a challenge for us. We're paying for the mowing. We have been paying for the mowing, it is a property that really is dangerous at this point. The house needs to come down. It's an attractive nuisance. And so from the perspective of stabilizing the neighborhood, benefiting surrounding property owners, and setting up a vacant lot that could be redeveloped or could be sold to the neighbors, if that's what we choose to do. So they can expand their property, maybe, put addition on a home, or something like that. It's an opportunity really to protect that neighborhood and benefit the community there's a cost. Without a doubt, we're asking for an appropriation of up to $48,000. We don't expect to need more than that to do the work that's needed. But nonetheless, it's a significant cost that we're not likely to recover selling vacant land. So this would be putting an investment into this neighborhood. The project itself is justified by our EDA plan in terms of it is something we can do as an East EDA district. It is also justified by provisions of our master plan, which we noted in that quote, and is consistent with a number of the adopted Board of Trustees and policies that we noted, the Board of Trustees goals addressed. You see in the request, we laid out some of the additional costs that bring the total up to the $48,000. The minimum bid price is just under $5,000. These are similar to what we've dealt with on a couple of other properties now that have been purchased, including 5800 East Picker, the East EDA district, and the property on Johnson Lane that was purchased. It's been rehabbed under the general fund. So in addition to the request for board action, we did include the background information, the assessor's record card, the correspondence with the county, and information they provided to me about the foreclosure information and the tax data. And so with that in mind, as I said, this is we're recommending that we move forward with this project to protect this neighborhood. We would ask for your authorization for the funds to purchase this property from the treasurer's office and to do the rehabilitation work that needs to be done. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is it a buildable lot?
It would be, yes. It's a lot that would comply with the ordinance.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to build up a small home, that lot is big enough to be able to do that?
Yes.
Once we go through this, what's the final objective then? Just basically offer it to the owners, or what's the end goal here? I assume you don't want to own it forever and ever.
Right. Yeah, this is not a case. For example, I mentioned Johnson Lane, 5243 Johnson Lane. We purchased that property out of tax foreclosure with a specific public purpose. We wanted to link two neighborhoods, and we're in the process of doing that, sidewalk project and some other things that we're looking at there. This one, we don't have a public use for this site. It's not something that is helpful for our utility system or to link anything together. So the intent would be, once the site is cleared, that we would market the property, sell it. Certainly would invite the neighbors, if they chose to purchase it, but other than that, we would be looking to market it for redevelopment for a house.
Okay. Thank you.
So now the correspondence that keeps talking about, then revert to fair market value. So the only way it reverts to fair market value is if someone puts a claim in before July 1st?
That is correct, yes. This is, you may have seen some court cases. There was a pretty spectacular one out of Oakland County where there were sales made, essentially profits, that the treasurer's office made more money on the sale of foreclosed property than they actually needed for the cover taxes and costs. And there were some court cases that resulted in a change to the law that provided additional opportunities for potential heirs, for potential claimants to seek those additional funds. And if they seek it, then the property must be sold at the market rate.
But they have only until July 1st, not until August 24th.
That's correct. They have until July 1st to make that fund.
Randy, I'm trying to find out where the costs are the I understand $4,800 of unpaid taxes, but I somehow missing with all this information.
Well, we didn't, and I apologize, I probably should have just put a little table in, but essentially the costs we have, if you look on page 22 of the packet, under cost, the first subsection there, just the minimum bid amount, and note that it's $4,956.
I'm sorry, where are you at now, page 22?
Page 22, page 3 of the report, it's page 22 of the packet.
49,
Under costs, bottom half of the page. Minimum bid amount, $156.31. That amount does include reimbursing the township for some of our ordinance enforcement activity for weed control. And then the next section is ancillary costs, and this is where the rest of the story really is.
Yeah.
We have $585 in overdue sewer charge that would become our responsibility if we purchase the property. In addition to that, we have the cost for the treasurer's office to prepare the quick claim deed and record it. We have the anticipated 2022 property taxes. Even though it's a public entity buying this property, we are responsible for the 2022 taxes. If we still own it, 2023, that would be tax exempt. And then there's the anticipated cost of mowing the property, keeping it down over this growing season. And we just know that that's about $2,500 maximum for that. And then beyond that, we have the demolition and cleanup, and that's estimated $25,000 to $35,000. That includes asbestos abatement, as well as demolition of the dwelling, including propagation, releveling the site, and cleaning up. There's some junk and some small structures in the backyard that need to be removed as well. And then finally, the last one, at the top of the next page, is a quiet title action. We received a quick claim deed from the treasurer's office, but what we really need to market the property is a warranty deed. So we'd be looking at having our attorney go through the process to quiet the title, and that's been estimated by the attorney at between $3,300 and $5,500. So the $4,800 reflects the higher number of all of these estimates.
I know we just had McGurk take down the 5,800 Pickard. I think that bill was 15,000 or 16,000.
It was. Yeah.
And just trying to figure how it goes into 25 to 35.
Well, we were very fortunate with that. We had the same estimate actually for that property. The reason it was not that high was because that property had been remodeled a number of times. And for example, all of the older heating elements that would have had asbestos wrapping around them were gone, completely removed. The potential asbestos in shingles or siding, all that had been long since removed. The only asbestos in the property was some small sections of flooring that had to be cleaned up, and it was literally some very small sections. So the cost to do that was a minimal amount. This property has not been cleaned up. It is likely even siding probably has asbestos in it, but certainly I suspect that the building itself has asbestos in it, so it's going to be significantly higher to get that abated.
I definitely, the place has got to be torn down. I mean, it's, and I drove all around that area. It really is the worst. The second worst is next door to it, which is a rental property owned by an individual. And I mean, yeah, it's got to be, someone's got to tear it down. I started thinking, well, what would the county do if no one bid it in? Would they have to tear it down, or would they just let it sit there forever? Or they go to the state?
Well, essentially, the treasurer's office is the property owner. So if we were to not purchase it, we would be providing ordinance and violation letters to the treasurer and say, look, you need to clean this up. The treasurer would be mowing it. They would, I suspect they would not go as far as to take the building down, but they would have to mow it at the very least. They do the minimum they possibly can, and they want to have the property out of their hands. Obviously, the treasurer's office is not set up to be able to manage these properties over a long period of time. That's what would happen, is that at the very least, they would be required to mow it until it can get sold.
We don't expect to get 48,000 out of it when we're done, do we? I mean, it's more of an act of kindness to the people in that area, I would think.
Exactly. Well, it's no different than paving the road. We didn't have, we didn't have to pave those roads. We could have left them and they would have waited until the county got around to it at some point, which is very likely it would be a long time. They would just patch it. But that's an investment that we gain nothing back from. I think similarly here, I think obviously there's going to be a residual value to the land, but it is not going to be a significant amount.
To kind of piggyback on Rick, so if this house was in the township but right outside of our district, would the township board take any action on this, or is that out of their wheelhouse as well?
Well, I mentioned that property earlier, 5243 Jonathan Lane, the Country Square Estate subdivision. That's a property that at the time was not in the East EDA district. It actually is now, with the changes that were made to that district. But at the time, it was not. This is the summer of 2020, when it came up as a tax foreclosed property. And there was a recognition that it linked these two neighborhoods together. And we had a 30-foot sanitary sewer easement running through it. That encumbered the property, also made it difficult to do anything else with it. It was the only house in the entire neighborhood that didn't have a garage, because the sewer easement prevented being able to put up a garage. So there were good reasons to look at this from a public perspective. And we brought the idea to the Board of Trustees, and they authorized funding to purchase that property, tore the house down, and as I said, we're now in the process of doing we're getting ready to do some design work on a sidewalk project. That's actually on the Board of Trustees' agenda for tomorrow night. So yes, if it's not in the DDA district, it could be brought to the township. Typically, we would not, the township would not do it for the reasons we're talking about. As I said, that was a public purpose. I suspect in the end that property may end up being a small neighborhood park by the time we're done. So typically it would be done if there's a real public purpose for doing it. But in the EDA district, we have an economic development purpose. That in this case, we're really trying to protect property values and protect the character of the neighborhood, because it benefits our business district.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. So you brought up the paving of those streets. What's stopping other areas to get enveloped by the DDA so stuff like that gets done? So it doesn't take years and years to get a sidewalk, or years and years to get a pothole actually repaired, not just patched. Where's the disconnect in our government that we as a board can get a lot of this stuff done quickly, right? And we can get a sidewalk up and down Lincoln, we can install irrigation along Pickard, we can do nice flowers, we can repave Yates Drive without having to jump through a lot of hoops with other entities. What's broken, I guess, in that system, I guess?
That's a great question, a fantastic question. This really gets to the whole reason why these DDA districts exist. The downtown development authorities, this concept of a downtown development authority, obviously, I mean, by the title, it was originally intended for a downtown business district. But it also covers neighborhoods, it covers our corridor. The language is broad, even if the original intent was focused on historic downtowns. The idea behind it was to be able to target resources at a problem. The original problem was we had downtown business districts with 19th century commercial buildings in them, with old infrastructure. They were too small, they were hard to maintain, they were expensive to reuse. Businesses were, hardware stores and grocery stores and such were moving out to Pickard Road, they were moving out to Mission Road. And so the downtown, it was deteriorating, and this deteriorating was a key. Property values were declining, and so the idea behind the EDA district was to be able to identify an area that needed to be targeted for investment, needed to be targeted for help, that the private sector was not going to be able to solve this problem on their own. And so this you basically draw a line around an area that has declining property values, has certain characteristics that meet the requirements of the law, and define that area. And once that area is defined, then the community has the ability to capture tax revenues from that area, from that defined space, that would otherwise go to other jurisdictions. We just talked about the Mid-Michigan College. We of course have the various county easements. We have our own township general funds, not easement, villages. And we also have our township general fund village that the EDA district captures. And essentially turns that money around. Instead of leaving the district and going to those other jurisdictions, it's turned around and allowed to be invested right back into the place it came from. So we're concentrating resources on the problem. With the goal of trying to uplift the whole neighborhood, to increase property values, to improve economic vitality of that space that we're working in. And the DDA districts were always thought to have some residences. Most DDAs have portions of residential neighborhoods, so, just as Seattle Drive is next door to commercial. So it was always thought of that there would be residences that would benefit as well. The whole point was to concentrate resources on the problem. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's the same thing we're talking about when we put the street lighting system in. It's the same reason we mow the grass on the median, because if we mow and maintain the grass and have our irrigation in there, we can assure a certain character. That character is defined by that grass, has a consistent look to it, by the street lights, by the flowers, all those things create a character that, frankly, in the spring of 2020 was absolutely essential. We made sure as soon as we possibly could that we got the flowers up, even though we were still shut down. We were working from home in spring of 2020 with COVID. But we got the flowers up as soon as we were allowed by the state to let the contractors loose. We got flowers up, we got banners up when we could. But it was all about saying that the business district is open for business. So that particular year had even more of an effect because it said, come to the businesses, we're not closed. So all this is about raising the character of the community up, raising the economic vitality up, and ultimately raising the property values up. That tax increment capture, at the time the DDA was created, whatever the amount that was captured at that particular time continues to go 100% to those taxing jurisdictions. What we're turning around is the increase. And so as we do our work and have success, that increase is going up, we get a greater margin. The other taxing jurisdictions are still getting what they were getting before the DDA came to be. But we're capturing the rest to be able to put it back into these investments.
Right, I'm totally aware of what DDAs, how they, it's really based on growth in those areas, potential growth in those areas, to get those to grow. And the township in general gave up part of their funding income, 100% of any growth over a certain point in time, whatever. I think the only question I ever have is the interpretation, it was a DDA design, or East DDA in particular, was that designed to include residential areas? I don't think that was the intention. I think the intention was the business district. I don't have a problem of going in and working on some of these things. To me, we have to be careful. The funding and resources we get from the businesses that are built there, not necessarily residences, how much of that goes into a residential area? And that's where that would be my only question. Like I said, we kind of stretched a little bit, and we did the township hall, Jameson Hall, and that whole area. And I don't know if that was the original intention, but I think it's a good thing for that area. I think we're talking somewhere similar for the same thing. I'm always cautious about how far we go into residential areas with funding that was generated primarily by the business district. So like I said, I'm not opposed to this. You know, I don't expect, if you tear that down, that lot might sit there for 10 years before somebody decides to build something on a 60-foot lot. One of the neighbors might do something with it, but I'm not, I don't expect that, but I just want to make the point.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's certainly potential that it could remain vacant for an extended period. The housing construction business today is chaos. There's high value, but also high cost, and it's almost impossible to be able to estimate what the actual cost would be to build a house because the numbers are changing so rapidly. Now, that is not going to last forever, and so hopefully we would be in good timing to sell the property to somebody needs it right away, or the neighbors want to add on, divide it, each one gets something, they can add on to the properties. The houses in that area are small. Most people want a larger house today, and so if they did add on, they could have room to build an addition, do something nice with the property next door. But the one thing I'll say just before go to you, but the district, the East District in particular, both districts have always included residences. Some in the West District were developed after the district was created, but they were residentially zoned when the district was created that included them. Most EDA districts do include residential areas, and so it is reasonable to provide some support for that. And even our East District plan, we even have some language in there that looks at the residences for potential grant funding. It's one of the grant funding categories. We haven't used it yet. It was one of the categories. So I understand the point. Certainly, most of the funding, most of the tax revenue is commercial, but not all. But these are part of the district, and the idea is that we're investing in the district. And if this residential neighborhood comes apart, it's going to affect the businesses around it. I've been amazed at what a small investment, and I'm not saying that $48,000 is small, but it is relatively small in comparison to what our total budget is. But I'm amazed at what a small investment can do. I had the experience of investing just a few $1,000s in a neighborhood, in a community I worked in many years ago, that resulted in a very large private investment. In the case of just a few $1,000s in public infrastructure improvements in front of, this was in a business area, in front of a jewelry store and a delicatessen, resulted in those two companies, those two businesses. One literally was leaving town. He was about to pack up. He was tired of that neighborhood. He didn't think the city cared, and he was moving. He was going to sell out. And the other one was just kind of holding its own. Both put in major investments. The jewelry store well over $100,000 into their property because of this few $1,000 public investment. So I've seen the benefit, and I can see that there's an opportunity here that if we clean this property up, I think there's a high likelihood of watching those neighbors go, wait a minute, we need to do something better. Look what's happened there. We need to do something better, especially when they find out that the East EDA district made this investment on their behalf.
Question. If we don't sell that piece of vacant property, how much will we pay in property taxes every year? So we don't sell that for 10 years.
Yeah, after 2022, we would be exempt from property taxes because it would be owned by a public entity.
Okay.
I had, Rick raises a point that interesting because he said, number one, that property was the worst in the neighborhood. And then right next to it was number two. So, is there a direct relationship? I think we could probably draw that conclusion. But the other thought that he raises that caught my attention was the idea that residential may not be generating the kind of revenues that the commercial is. That could be true, but it also could be a speculation. And if we don't know, it's hard to say. And maybe we don't want to know, but I think it's an opportunity to maybe consider looking at the idea that, okay, we did this, we affected something. Now, what are the results, short-term and long-term? Can we measure that? And I don't want to put burden on an office that you guys people already do a lot of work. But, you know, would that be some sort of a reference that might help to justify further activity in that area? If we could show in numbers that it was, or maybe it wasn't positive, maybe it was just a wash, maybe it's something we want to hedge on, maybe that's a reason to not think about it. But it raised that question in my mind, is what about the idea of seeing what this kind of investment did? Because your reference of a few $1,000s, if that was measured, it probably produced thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars over the years for that jewelry store and the deli to stay there versus leave and then deteriorate. And I just wonder if we decide to go down this road and then all of a sudden number 2 property isn't so bad anymore, it starts to get cleaned up, and maybe some other positive effects, but it could be used as kind of a marker that we could use going forward as a reference to what our efforts may produce. That's my thought on it. Just wanted to raise that thought. It's not a proposal, just a thought.
So I appreciate the picture that you sent out to the board. So I had to go drive by it too, and I agree that the house to the south was the second worst. What surprised me was to the north, 2 to the south, how nice they were. And I thought, if I own this nice home and I'm sitting next to this one, every day I drive by it, it's going to drive me crazy. And so there's no question it's an eyesore, it's blight, it's not good for the community. But you know, I certainly have reservations, but I'm not opposed to this idea. But what happens if we don't act on the 1st and it goes to the tax sale on August 24th? At that point, it's essentially bidding, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And is there a minimum bid at that point then?
I don't know all the answers to that. I know it would send you up for an auction. Whether the minimum bid would apply or not, I would have to defer to the treasurer's office. If it does not sell in the auction, there's essentially another opportunity later in the year where we could attempt to purchase it, again, for the minimum bid amount. And as I said, if it doesn't sell at all, the treasurer's office has to deal with it in some form, whatever they're going to do. The big concern that I have, and is noted in here, related to the Board of Trustees' goals, is that the property could be purchased by a landlord, let's say a less reputable landlord. And they might try to attempt to put it back into service as a rental. With the minimum necessary activities to do that. That would not help the neighborhood. Certainly they'd have to make some improvements to it. That doesn't mean they have to make it look pretty. They get away with just the bare minimum. So I'd rather not get in that circumstance where it might be picked up by somebody who would think that they have a cheap rental they can use.
So the gas station that's going in, Krista, is that?
Christ Oil, K-R-I-S.
Christ Oil. So as you described the parcel, you were talking about the vacant property. Is that what parcels are they actually buying?
So if you look at the map, the aerial view at the end, you can see, let's say roughly, you see the corner at Pickard and Isabella. You have commercial buildings there. There are 3 houses going west of Isabella and Pickard, and then the tattoo place Those three houses between the corner and the tattoo place are being demolished. All of that is going to be part of this Crystal Oil filling station site. The south end of the filling station site is basically aligned with the first residence property on Isabella. But you can also kind of look at it as an extension of Gas Drive, more or less. So it sort of squares off that property there. So the vacant land that is directly to the east of Gas Drive, which in this aerial photo is shown broken up into several long skinny parcels, has now been combined, and it's several acres, basically vacant land on the east side of Gas Drive that could be developed, like water or sewer, could be used for something.
Those are very lengthy. They go all the way to Mayor McGuire property line, it looks like.
That's correct.
So, in driving there, I mean, I guess one of the perspectives I was taking was, can this blight have an effect on the business district over on Isabella? And as I saw that green cover, the trees, it's pretty shielded. Now, obviously it's not good for the neighborhood, but I was curious what its effect would be on the business corridor on Isabella. So with the purchase of this property, do they have plans on what they're doing with that green space? Do you know?
It's owned by an investor. In fact, those houses along Isabella, between Crystal Oil and the elementary school, are owned by that same investor. They've been working it. I think they would love to see something happen there. So certainly there's an intent to develop it. What it would be developed for, there's nothing currently in the mix, not even a proposal, but it is land that would be useful for a variety of potential purposes.
Yeah, I didn't know if they had current plans with, so the gas station won't be using that, that's just extra parcels that they also bought.
Well, actually, the gas station, what they did was, they reconfigured the land, they divided it up, so now there's now a Crystal parcel, which is that square right at the corner, and this vacant land along Yaps Drive is a separate parcel that's been retained by the investor, investment company.
I see.
Crystal Oil does not own
And that's those two tall pieces, essentially?
that. Yes, it's all one now.
All
Yes.
one now.
There's actually three skinny pieces there.
And how many did they buy along Isabella then? It's up to that one house they also bought on Isabella, correct?
No, they didn't buy any of those.
Any of you, okay. But a likelihood, I'm assuming, as Isabella gets developed on that west side, south of Pickard, we may see investors want to buy backwards farther towards Yaps, right? And
That's
buy
right.
that green space?
Yeah, especially if you're looking at something commercial or office related, they're going to want more depth than those residential lots along Isabella frontage will have.
And it's just an assumption, but I'm assuming that's what that investor's thinking is probably as well.
Sure.
So let me ask your opinion then. Again, the perspective of, does this blight affect the business corridor? It may not today too much, other than it degrades the area, the neighborhood. But it could in the future now, correct?
Well, I think, we can talk about Isabella Road. I would say that there's actually more of a potential impact on Pickard, because of Yaps Drive and Betty Lane coming out to Pickard. A vibrant neighborhood there is going to use those businesses. A vibrant neighborhood there is going to also benefit the elementary school. And all of that, when you have a healthy neighborhood, makes it far more likely people are going to move in. And all of that has potential to improve the business climate. But if you have problem houses behind the business corridor, people notice those things.
Right. And that would be the motivation from my perspective in general, if I was supporting this. It makes the whole area better by eliminating blight.
But if this house goes up for a bid, there might be somebody in the area that might want to purchase that piece of property and build on it for a very inexpensive piece. And once we bid on it, it's, I mean, if they go to try to purchase it from us, it's gonna be more expensive.
Yes, because, well, I will say this, that if we were purchasing it, we would go through the process to demo the house, clear the
Yeah.
lot. They would then be buying the land
Right.
for whatever the value that's agreed upon, whatever that might be. And I would assume that that value would probably be based on an appraisal of the vacant land. Yes, it is true. If there was somebody out there that wanted to buy it, we would be precluding them from buying it, because we purchase it before it goes out for auction.
So
They would never even know that it was actually up for auction.
So could we wait to see if someone purchases it and then we decide to purchase it because it's still lighted?
We do have, as I said, we have an opportunity later in the year,
Decision now.
if it does not sell, to purchase it again. What I will say is that what we run the risk of is we run the risk of somebody that's undesirable from a rental perspective, most likely, purchasing this property. We have a rental inspection program. I manage that and oversee that program. I've already been dealing with 2 years of ordinance enforcement that we control. I'd hate to have to bring in the rental inspector aside and do ordinance enforcement on that side to try to compel somebody to do the right thing. This is an expensive property. I mean, that $48,000 is a big number to clean that property up. That's a big number for somebody to be looking at, because that's added on to the cost of whatever else they might want to do with the property. And I think pretty quickly, if the balance, especially in today's market, I think you start to run into trouble if you're spending $50,000 to prepare the site and then you have to build the house as well. So like I said, from our perspective, this is an investment. We're not going to come out even on this. We're putting money in we're not going to get back, just like when we paid those roads.
So, just to restate that, I mean, I think I don't wanna step on market either, but I think you're right. No one's gonna come in and go, oh, I want this piece of property, I'm gonna demo this and put all that money in to build a house. They'll find a different lot to do that. There'll be wiser money spent. Where the advantage, if we were to clear it, is we're encouraging something better use, a better piece of property ultimately. Is it the right thing to do?
I'm following on what Brian's thinking and saying that there is probably only one real investor that is looking at going in and cleaning this up, and that would be the Union Township East EDA. Because there's too many other opportunities that are gonna not cost you, I don't think it's gonna cost $50,000, I think that's, a nice high estimate, but let's say it does. I don't see people going even paying $40,000 if they can turn around and sell it, maybe a $10,000-$15,000 lot, and so that they can build a house on it. I don't think that's very likely, but I do think it's more likely that you could have that single investor that's looking for a real low investment of $5,000-$6,000 to rent it out at $500 a month or whatever it may be, and it stays, and it stays. And that's the option that I see happening if somebody doesn't go in and clean it up. It stays, and it stays, and doesn't get rented. It just sits there. So either of those options don't sound too nice for the neighborhood, and it kind of switches it back to us. And we're not sitting here saying, what can we do? We're saying we have an opportunity to do something. And you presented it with us, for us. And I think it seems like a very good option for the East DDA to move forward on, from my perspective.
In the interest of moving this along, I'd like to make a motion to authorize an appropriation of up to $48,000 for purchase from the Isabella County Treasurer of one tax foreclosed parcel totaling approximately 0.24 acres of land, PID 14-01420-017-00, located at 2120 20 Yates Drive at the minimum bid price of $4,956.31 plus payments of ancillary cost for the purchase, removal of the dilapidated dwelling and other structures, and associated site cleanup and restoration cost to prepare the lot for redevelopment, and to authorize the township manager to execute the purchase in accordance with this appropriation.
Motion by Jim Zaled, second by Dave Coyne. Any further discussion?
I just want to mention, follow up on what Marty said about, I said the property to the north was second worst, that was a rental. And I think the renter, I think that's what, something the township or some township inspector can get in and talk to them and get the renters to clean that place. That's really what it takes.
I think there's actually some effort going on right now.
Okay, good. Because the guy in the south has got a nice place, he really fixed it up.
Yeah.
The guy in the north is just a rental.
It almost looked like that rental was vacant, but there was a vehicle
Yeah.
parked in the
I
back.
think there's people there.
You do? Okay,
So,
yeah. I couldn't tell.
Hearing no more discussion, all in favor of Jim's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion's carried, approved unanimously. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 8B. What do we got there?
Well, thank you. This is an interesting one. We're blessed to have a regional general aviation airport, excellent airport, Pleasant Municipal Airport. It is owned by the city, located in the township, and just outside of our EDA district. This is a regional resource, and that has been recognized by the various municipalities. And last year, a joint airport operations and management board was created by intergovernmental agreement between the city, Union Township, Isabella County, the tribe, and the Middle Michigan Development Corporation, each of which putting financial resources in to help improve the airport, increase growth and new opportunities there. And this joint operations board is represented from each of those agencies. I serve as the township representative. The agreement was set up that the representatives be an administrative person, not an elected person. So I have the benefit to represent the township on this board, and in fact, I was elected chair last year. Margaret McAvoy was chair until she retired. I was elected chair and serving as chair. And this body, the purpose of this body is to try to grow the airport, to look for opportunities and ways, brainstorm and try to, and not only look for ways, but to implement ways to grow corporate traffic, to increase awareness, to create opportunities for new investment, for education, bring various elements in to help the airport become more resilient, be more of an asset to the community. So with that in mind, one of the projects that early on came up was a need for a crew car, they call it a courtesy vehicle. Many general aviation airports have a courtesy vehicle that the flight crews can use. We get a lot of traffic for the casino, so I'll use that as an example. When Santana comes in, or Chris Rock, or whoever comes in, that flight crew is sitting in the airport with hours to kill, 8, 10 hours perhaps or more. And They want to go in and get something to eat, they want to go to a movie, they want to go to the bank, whatever they might want to do. They don't have wheels to get to there unless somebody gives them a ride, or they rent a car or Uber, all of which can be very expensive. In the past, actually, for this airport, most times they would rent a car. The car rental companies would be shuffling cars back and forth. And it's a very expensive proposition to do that. So it's a recognition, and it came up earlier in our discussion, and looking at some of the other airports, that most of these airports, general aviation airports, have a vehicle that is just available, that they can borrow it, usually sign a little agreement, yes, I agree to take care of it, yes, I agree to put gas in it, and they go and maybe they have 2 hours, a certain period of time they can use it, certain area that they can cover, they can't go beyond a certain number of miles of the airport usually. They go do their business, go to the restaurant, whatever they want to do, they come back. And so we began talking about how do we get there? How do we find that? We looked at, could we find a dealership that would perhaps donate a car? Well, where we are right now, used cars are precious commodities, they have been. And new cars are impossible to find for a time. So that was an option. We actually looked at if we had a township vehicle that might be able to be repurposed to that as a potential. But ultimately, the city found a car that they had literally lost. It was not, it had been, it was a victim of COVID. It had been removed from the police service right as COVID hit, and the paperwork did not get dealt with properly, and so it got forgotten in the corner of the parking lot. And so it was never auctioned off as what normally would have happened. And so they realized they had it. And of course you got a picture of it, nice old black and white. It's not that old actually, it's beautiful inside. And actually very good shape all around. But it's a black and white police cruiser, and so they decided that they would put for their contribution to the car up, the city is covering the insurance for it. What they're looking for at this point is basically creating some funding to be able to maintain and operate this vehicle, and also ultimately what we'd like to do with it as a joint operations board, speaking now as representative of that body, we'd like ultimately to do a vinyl wrap on this car. We don't want to repaint it, but you can actually do a vinyl wrap these days. It's relatively inexpensive, where we can put logos on it. So the NASCAR kind of a thing. We're not going to make it into a NASCAR with a million logos, but we want to put sponsoring agencies logos on it. We want to have the Mount Pleasant EDA logo that the Convention Visitors Bureau uses. So this car is noticeable as it travels about. All that takes some funding. What we have right now is a functional car. The city paid for a minor repair of the air conditioner. It was the only thing needed done to put it into service. So this proposal before you is a proposal to put some investment into the ongoing maintenance and operation of this vehicle. I will say this, it seems odd, the airport's not in the East EDA. The airport's owned by the city, but this car, the folks that are using this car are shopping along the Vickers Road. They're going to Mount Town Brewery, they're going to various places around town. We've already known that. The car is already in operation, and the city is right now manually tracking. They're asking, where did you go, kind of thing, just say no. They're eventually going to have a GPS tracker on it, so that they'll actually have a record of where the vehicle goes, and so they can share that information. But this vehicle is coming into our EDA particularly. So it has a direct benefit to the business community. And the folks who are driving these vehicles, these flight crews, have disposable income. So they're making good use of it as visitors in our community. And it has already been proven attractive enough that some of the corporate business owners that fly in have donated their own funds. So far, about $2,500 donated by private funds to make sure that this vehicle is available. What we're proposed before you is a proposal to contribute $1,000, $500 from each of the DDA districts that would go to maintaining this crew car as a courtesy vehicle. When the final wrap is done, we would become one of the sponsoring agencies, so we could have our logo with whatever we might want to put on it. We did, that's part of that, just say the courtesy of, kind of, thing. But really, the point here is that it provides an opportunity for money that would otherwise be hanging out in the airport lounge to be spent in our business district by folks that have disposable income to spend. That, happy to answer any questions.
I'm just curious why you need authorization from this board for 1,000 when I think you guys have the ability to do it. I mean, the $10,000 and then tell us later what you did. I'm sorry, but
No,
you're selling this thing just about as much as selling that $48,000. So
Yeah.
I can't, I'm gonna make a motion to approve this thing.
I'll second it.
To authorize a funding contribution of 1,000 Mount Pleasant Municipal Airport to support operation and maintenance. The airport crew provided as a courtesy for flight crews to use the access restaurants, other amenities during layover period, with funding to be divided evenly between the East Downtown Development Fund and the West Downtown Development Fund.
Support.
Question?
Question. Do we have an EDA logo or?
We do not. I think what we probably put on there is the Charter Council Review logo, but that, if you really want to talk about, we could come up with one, but yes, no, there's no.
We'll do another motion to cover the $1,000 it'll take to develop the logo.
It's not $1,000 you're talking about.
I was just gonna say, I'm glad you're gonna wrap this thing, if something show, give me that card, look at it, and go, what, can't you guys do better?
Yeah. Price is right.
It sounds like a great idea.
I think so.
Got a
I mean,
motion.
we get entertainers that come to the airport that we pick up in my vehicle.
Yep.
So I think it's,
So we got a motion on the floor made by Rick Myers, support by Jeff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Would you have wanted to miss hearing this and have an opportunity to vote on it? I wouldn't want it to cry. Thank you.
And move on to item 9, pending business. Anything there? Nothing? Did you have something, 9?
Not for 9, but I
Okay,
figured I
then
could make
direct-
up for 10.
Director comments on item 10. Also, Brian had a couple words on an item, but go ahead.
Okay, I covered.
I can wait, go ahead.
Well, I just want to give you an update of the Reapers Road sidewalk project. The permit is out, and has approved our permit. Basically, the contractor is working on scheduling and expect that project to begin shortly. The other sidewalk project, we have the West EDA section of sidewalk between the Lux Funeral Home and the Township Hall is still hung up with County Road Commission permitting. But we're hopeful on that one that will come through shortly. The other project we have is the MDOT M20 reconstruction. It's scheduled to start next year. Just a quick update on that. I'm going to be meeting with the crew from our local MDOT office tomorrow, and we're going to be talking details. We're going to be talking the street lighting system. We're going to be talking the underground irrigation system, and ensuring that their prep work is set up so that we can put things back in terms of irrigation. They are going to put back the street lighting system. But for example, they're going to be putting conduit underneath all the driveways. They're going to be created so they can run that wiring. At the same time, I'm talking about putting in conduits. We have places to run the underground irrigation lines through that same space, which they, despite, I don't know how many times I've said it, they hadn't thought of that. And so finally got that in the brain, and says, we need to sit down and talk about that. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow in some detail. I did float the idea because I said, we need to talk about how to coordinate. We don't want you to put everything back, plant grass, and then we have to tear it all up. And how do we do that? And they said, well, we can't, if we don't have a contractor, we can't come with a contractor. And I said, well, what about putting our underground irrigation into your project? And then we work out the price for that. And so it becomes part of your bid, your contractor's doing it. And we work out how to make that happen. So that idea actually did not get rejected when I floated it. I expected it would, but it did not, and like I said, that's part of our conversations tomorrow. So much more to come on that, but like I said, they're getting down to the nitty-gritty details, and they are working with us on those things. So I think ultimately we'll get where we need to go. We're going to have a good project. Tomorrow's going to be a big step in that. So those are the items I had for you, Director.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, May 23rd was the biannual 2% distribution. And I just had to lift up and give a shout out to the tribe for the generosity of the township. They were very generous to us. They gave out just over $2.3 million in 2% distribution in Isabella County. Isabella County was awarded $686,000 roughly. City of Mount Pleasant with $280,000, and then Union Township almost $255,000. And the two projects that we had applied, I think, 5 different projects. They've awarded 2 of those, and I thought you'd have interest in these. Pump station number 1, that the EDA is a partner in. The tribe contributed $75,371. And then the Lincoln Road project, you've seen the cost of that skyrocket, and that they contributed almost $180,000. So I thought you'd like to hear that. And just a note, Township Hall parking lot is going to be redone, I think this summer, right? It's going to
Early August.
early August. And in that process, they're going to be moving the east side of the parking lot back to make way for sidewalks. Because right now that parking lot almost comes onto Lincoln.
So is the township gonna go
Yeah.
through with the sidewalks on Pickard, Lincoln,
Correct.
Pickard to your park and to the?
That's
the
the
water
idea.
tower?
I'm
So-
being careful only because it's on the agenda for tomorrow to approve funding for that, at least engineering and overseeing of the contract. But I anticipate support. I can't say that because the board's not voted on it, but I anticipate that will move forward.
It would be a nice goodwill gesture
Right.
to do it yourself. And,
Yep.
you know, after requiring all the businesses to do it and not have it done.
Absolutely, and that's been the discussion, is to lead by example, so I don't want to get ahead of myself because the board has not spoken on it yet,
Right.
so. But I thought you'd have interest in that as well. Thanks.
Yep. So I take it nobody put in for the airport crew car?
I actually had that thought. I'll bring it up tomorrow.
Grab it.
Right.
Give our casino host a lot less driving. But, anything else for the good of the order?
Nope.
Nothing, we'll see everybody next meeting, Tuesday, July 19th. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Call is
Tom.
adjourned.
Our special meeting on July 26th. I will be.
Okay.
I'm out. I'll make it work. I'll send an email as we get closer to it, just as a reminder.
Does Sherry have checks for you this
Well, that was the one that Rodney was mentioning, the special.
These are for comment, I got checks.
I don't
think I signed them anymore.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Does he